Welcome to Custom Home Builder Solutions, a web-based software, also known as CHS, a standalone accounting suite focused on job costing and profit management for professional home builders.
Good morning, this is Carol King, the developer of Custom Home Builder Solutions software, also known as CHS. I said good morning because quite often I am doing these things at 4 or 5 a.m. in the morning when everything's really quiet. So let's get going with what this video is about. We've been talking about vendor setup. This is a continuation of setting up vendors, and we looked at what are vendors before. And in our previous videos about setting up vendors, we've been clicking vendors list and setup, and then we've been clicking to edit or look at the setup window for the vendor. But in this case, I'm going to another spot because this video is actually going to be about setting up for tracking general liability insurance, workers' comp insurance, and other miscellaneous expenses, and how you need to set up the vendor for that. But I'd like to go to a screen that I want you to be really aware of, a couple of windows, that has to do with the general liability insurance audit reports, that those insurance auditors say, oh, you have CHS, just give me that report, and away I go. I used to spend quite a while before a general liability insurance audit, when I was controller for a custom home builder, just gathering all sorts of information and putting together reports they requested. So I went ahead and programmed CHS to handle that, because I want you to be very aware of what the end result of setting this up will cause, or will allow you to get those reports. I'm going to go back to the home menu, the home or main menu, and I'm going to click vendor insurance. Now I'm sitting here in November of 2020, but I'm going to just play like my policy period. That's what you would put in here before you do an insurance audit report. Your insurance company will give you a policy period. And I'm going to say 0701 2019 206 30 2020. It seems like quite often it's a policy period like that from July to June for whatever reason, for general liability. Now notice how this is dim until I click the tab key. It will not be undim until you put in both these dates, and this date should always be before that date. But let's do the general liability audit button. Now a whole lot about this screen will be in a future video farther down the list in the playlist, so that we can really dig into the insurance audit reports and various things that CHS produces. But what this list is all paid bills for vendors marked that general liability insurance is required. Notice that it says paid bills, not bills that you've entered that are still unpaid. It's just what you've paid for vendors that are marked that general liability insurance is required and paid during the policy period dates. This list does not include general liability or workers' comp insurance deductions. We will see that in a minute. I'm going to go show opening a bill and how CHS alerts you that one or the other of these is expired, and that you can deduct from the bill that you're paying to cover the fact that they are expired. You can deduct an amount for the insurance, and we'll see that in a minute. But that amount you deduct isn't included in this list because your insurance auditor does not care about amounts you're deducting. You're just deducting and holding those ahead of time before the audit, because you know when you have the audit, if they are uninsured, you're going to have to pay the insurance company for them. So it's just an in and out on, it's like an in and out on your books. At some point in time you'll pay the bill, and then you will look and see how much you deducted to see if you deducted enough to cover what you're having to pay for some uninsured trade contractors. Usually it is the trade contractors that have general liability insurance that's required, as far as I understand it. Also, this list of bills does not include entries that have the cost type of sales tax, so that you're not ending up paying insurance on the sales tax portion of some bills that you got. So this is a list of bills paid for each vendor, grouped by vendor, and is showing you all sorts of things here about them so that you can do some things to check this before your audit, look for things that are showing as expired, and maybe you need an insurance certificate and that kind of thing. But what I'd like to show you, I'm going to go down and use Big Buck, is that if you click on this blue hyperlink for the vendor code for Big Buck, here we are back at that setup screen that we've been going over in the previous videos. Now let's go over here to this area for general liability insurance first. And the first thing that you'll see here is a checkbox. And required means that if the vendor is a trade contractor that works at your job sites, your insurance company may require that they carry general liability insurance. If that's the case, and the vendor does not carry the insurance, your insurance company will probably charge you more for these uninsured trades. So even though the vendor does not actually have insurance or something that you know about, but it would be required by your auditor, you would put required here. When you first set up a vendor, today's date will just automatically drop into the expires. And if they don't have an insurance certificate, you might just leave that date so it'll keep telling you that their stuff is expired and that maybe you need an insurance certificate from them. By clicking to put a check mark in the general liability checkbox, you are informing CHS to alert you when entering bills to pay about the vendor insurance expirations and about coverage that is too low. We'll get over here in just a second. That alert can be used on the window to add new vendor bills to post a deduction, like I said, for insurance from the vendor if that is your company policy. A check mark will also cause this vendor to be included on the general liability audit reports. So the expires date will be, hopefully they have given you an insurance certificate, and we'll talk about how you can request one from them and how you can upload one and store it in CHS in a minute. But if you have an insurance certificate, you should put the expiration date from that insurance certificate right here, and this is what will control whether CHS is alerting you that it's expired or not. Then this rate here, your insurance agent should be able to give you a list of rates that the insurance company will charge for various types of uninsured trade contractors. Those rates can vary depending on the work that the trade contractor does. If you have a trade contractor that is uninsured, you will probably want to deduct an amount from the trade contractor that is equal to or greater than the rate your insurance company is charging. So you use the rate field to enter that rate so that it will drop in if you elect to deduct general liability insurance when posting a bill from this vendor. Okay, the liability amount right here, you will enter the amount of liability insurance coverage carried by the vendor. If you placed a check mark over here in the required box, the program will compare this amount to the amount that you entered as being required by your insurance company on your company master when you set up CHS. If the amount is lower than the required amount, CHS will be alerting you when you enter invoices that they don't carry enough insurance for that. If there's a general liability certificate number that you'd like to put in here, it's just up to you. Just for information, you can type that in here. And if you'd like to know what you entered in your company master for what insurance is required, you can click this link and it will tell you that $500,000 is required. That's what you put in your company master. So you can tell, you can just kind of look. If they don't have enough, you're going to know that you're going to start getting alerted about that. Now before we leave here, I'd also like to say that you can do workers' comp insurance, and we'll open a screen for that. We haven't done that yet, but workers' comp insurance. If you're in a state that requires that you carry workers' comp insurance, I guess on your trade contractors or suppliers, of course you would check mark it right here, and you would get a workers' comp certificate from the vendor. And in a minute we'll talk about uploading that or requesting that. It's pretty straightforward. What date from that certificate did it expire? And what kind of rate you might like to charge them if you plan to deduct workers' comp from them when you're paying a bill because they don't carry their workers' comp and you're wanting to start deducting that amount from them so you collect it when you have to pay for workers' comp insurance. so that you've already taken it out and maybe covered it. There is a question mark for all of this right here. Then the last thing is other expirations for this vendor. Various builders asked us to have maybe about 5 fields that they could set up their own stuff here for just tracking whether something has expired. For example, a city license, a state license. What you can do is you can type in any title that you want here, and next time you're in this field there'll be a drop down so that you could just select what you're usually using this field for. So that's all that this is about, is that you can get an alert if these are expired. So it's whatever you want. You can type in any title. You do not have to select it from the drop down date. Now we're going to see a great big screen that shows a combination of all these expiration dates that you can look at all vendors to determine if you're needing to request something from them. Now I'm going to talk about how you can either upload a copy of their certificates and how you can request a copy of their certificates. Now right while you're on this screen, if you notice that somebody had expired right here while you're here, or you're setting them up and you would like to request an insurance certificate from them, you can use the button up here to upload or edit documents, and you can send a request. But I'm going to close this screen because I want to show you something else. Back on that general liability audit screen that we had open a minute ago, I'm going to open that. I just want to show you a couple of things that happens. Let's go down to Big Buck that we just had open, and notice that it shows the 2021 as expired, and that things that were paid were not expired before the paid date, so there is a no here. But let's reopen Big Buck's setup screen for just a minute, and let's just play. I'm going to put a 20 here, like things had expired. And by the way, that just popped up and said, do I want to upload an insurance certificate? And it will take you through some steps I'm going to go through here in just a minute. But let's save that, close that, and see this refresh. Let's go back to Big Buck because the whole screen refreshed. Now notice that it says expired before, because we paid them on 6/29/20, these 3 lines that we paid during our policy period, but their insurance saying that it expired on this date. So what you can do when you're preparing for your insurance audit, etc., and you can do this from the screen where you set up the vendor, but I just wanted to show you that you can do an upload right here, and it'll come in and show you all the things that you can upload for controlling the vendor. We have already uploaded a general liability insurance certificate, but I can send a request for a document. I could select general liability insurance, and then I can prepare a document request, which opens the window for comments that we have throughout CHS, and it has put in some verbiage here about saying we are requesting your general liability insurance, and then you can send it as an email to them so that they are alerted. The vendor will get it, and they'll have a green reply button there that they can reply to it and upload their certificate. Now this has already happened in my case so that I wouldn't take a lot of time on this video. So I'd like to close this for just a second. Now I'd like to go back to the launch screen to show you that when you're on the launch window, you'll see comments to and from various people, from you going out and not in the recent dates. But I put in some dates to actually just show me May so I could go back to when I did this. But here's the comment saying, this is a request for your latest certificate for general liability insurance, and it was sent to Big Buck. I can see the last sent information. I can resend it if it just stays here without some reply happening. But I did get a reply from them, and things from vendors or outside contacts are in yellow, and it says attached is our latest general liability certificate, and you can see a paperclip icon right here to see what it is that they sent you, to make sure that it's what you wanted, and it is their certificate of insurance. So what you can do is you can save the attachment as a vendor document so that you don't have to save it somewhere on your computer and then go upload it. But I'm going to select general liability, and I'm going to say store attached document, and then it asks if I want to open the vendor setup. And this will happen all over the place where you do uploads of things. But I noticed on that liability certificate here, if I look at it and open it from here, I can look at it again. And I faked and typed over things, you know, and made the update be that it expires 3/28/21. I couldn't get into and edit this original certificate that we had here. And I'll show you how that stays open in another tab, and I go back to Custom Home Builder Solutions to be back on the program. So it's there and it's just fine. And I see that we've been updated to 21 with that insurance certificate. That's where it popped up after I changed the date and said, do I want to upload one, just in case I hadn't. That's what that was. So I just wanted to show you how you can do that. And also, since I changed the date, I need to save it, close it, and close. And I wanted to show how you'll see right away when you get it and how easy it is to save that attachment that they just sent to you without you having to go upload it. But let's go back to that vendor insurance and licenses. Go back to the general liability audit. Get back to Big Buck. And now we see that it's been updated and it's back in the no thing. But if you just have gotten an email yourself from it and you didn't do it through comments, then you would get the email, save it in some folder, and if you go to upload for this person, when you click to upload something, let's say it's a workers' comp certificate, you'll go to a screen where you can then open and browse your computer and upload it from whatever folder that you put it into. So you don't have to do it through the comments. This upload button will be here if you don't have one here, and you can override it. You can clear this one out and then upload a newer one just using this screen. But it's kind of nice to use those comments to send and request things. You can do it for workers' comp or for your other expirations that we saw a minute ago. So I wanted to make you very aware of this screen. The other thing is the report. We're not going to get heavy duty into the reports. We're going to do another video about general liability insurance that's not about setting it up. But notice here that under Big Buck, we've been given a link here, and if I export this to PDF, that link will be active. So when that insurance auditor comes in, of course I haven't uploaded for everybody because I'm not a builder and I don't have all these things. But on every line here, you might have an insurance certificate, and you could email this to your insurance auditor, and they would be able to click on the link if you export it to PDF. Let me just do that real quick. You'll notice right here that when I hover over it, it turns into a hand, meaning it's an active link. I believe this is a good active link right here. So imagine that you're the insurance auditor getting this report. They can just click and see the various certificates without you having to run copies of them and hand them a whole stack of them. So that's another advantage of doing the uploads in CHS and getting those attached to the vendor. So what I'd like to talk about, we'll come back and talk all about that report and various other things about general liability, workers' comp audit. Overall, here's the big thing I told you that we'd see a big screen of everything, vendor expirations, and you could do some searching for ones that are getting close to expiring, etc. And here's that same thing where you could send a comment request that you send to the vendor requesting whatever certificate is that you need from them. That's also over here on the main menu, vendor expirations. You could go straight to this same screen. So that's either that or that. It's the same one. Insurance or expirations. Control docs will actually show all of your vendors, and yes, there will be yeses in here for things that you have uploaded. And in order to upload something else for somebody, it'll be that same screen we've been looking at, and you can start uploading things if you notice there's no yeses across here. I just want to make you aware of that. So what I'd like to do is go back to the main menu before I finish this out and show you the other effect of those insurance things. Let's enter a bill from scratch. I'm being warned that I have recurring entries. And let's select our Big Buck to enter a bill. Now notice over here I created an alert that workers' comp had expired, so that I see that over here. And I might want to make a comment to whoever's approving the bills to pay to let them know that it's expired. If I still had an expired general liability insurance certificate, I could do that and add a new activity And these things would be things that will show up after you select some certain vendor, and you might pay attention to what you've put over here, and it'll go away after you edit this with the pencil edit icon and mark it as done. So if I open to do a job related bill, it shows me and pops up and tells me that my workers' comp is required and it is expired. Deduct ? So I will say yes. Let me move this over a little bit. Notice the end of this line for entering a bill. I will say yes, and I'm going to close this. So by the way, it's telling me I have those miscellaneous things that have expired also, like we saw a minute ago, and I can see those there. But right over here, if I'm entering a bill for a job and various kinds of things, if I enter an amount, let's just say 1,000, you'll see that we put in 2% for workers' comp insurance that we want to deduct when it's expired. And so it's going to take $20 away from this 1,000 before you pay the check, post it to pay the check, etc. And so that's what's going on. There's something very similar. You will end up selecting a GL account number. Here's an account you have set up when you actually pay the insurance company. Here's a place that I set up a general ledger account number to store the amounts that I am deducting. These don't get posted to the jobs. They don't reduce the job cost. This is just for you to be taking it out so that when you come along and have to pay the bill for workers' comp, you have already collected some to help cover that. I have them in two separate accounts. I don't put a credit here. I have it in two separate accounts so I can just see how much I did withhold from people. A very similar thing happens with insurance general liability and general liability insurance deducted from trades. Let's go ahead and not post this bill, and I think I have somebody that has both things expired. But notice I'm getting an alert both about the general liability being expired, the workers' comp being expired. And so now if I put $1,000 that I'm going to pay them over here, let's say I put some sales tax on this. I want you to see something. I want you to know that if the rate isn't here, if it's 0 for workers' comp and I put a 2 in, it's going to ask me, should I update that vendor to store a 2 so that next time a 2% would just drop in. And I'll say, if it's okay, I'll do the update. It says it's been stored. So the first time that you're working with vendors and you didn't put a rate in, and then you type one here, it'll notice that you don't have it set up on the vendor setup and ask you if you'd like to get it stored there. Notice how this $20 is 2% of the 1,000. Well, good grief. That's a really big sales tax amount. Is 2% of the 1,000 and is not 2%, does not include the amount for sales tax, so it's $20 right over here. I have the same thing for deduct liability insurance, and by the way, the first time you come in and you haven't set up a default GL, and you select one, general liability insurance deducted from trades, from your chart of accounts, it will remember it next time that that's the overall one you want for your GL liability deduction. For all vendors, it'll remember it and it'll drop it in. It's going to store and remember that that's the GL that you use this time. So the very first time you're earning a bill, there probably won't be a GL. You can set up ones like I have. You select it, and then CHS is going to remember next time that that's what you want. And when this bill posts, it's going to make 3 lines, actually 4 lines, one for the amount, one for the sales tax, and amounts for each one of these that are minus amounts in your books. And you can go look on your general ledger at these 2 accounts to see how much you withheld from various vendors for these 2 insurances. So I wanted to show you about how it will alert you, and if you get an alert, you might want to make a comment right here. It wants me to have an invoice number first, and it's a good idea also to have a job already selected before you do this so it can get attached to that job when you do the comment. It'll get attached to the cost code that's there, the job, or whatever. And right here I could say, and I might put it to the project manager on the job or something, and I could send this out via email. But if I just save it, what's going to happen is that there's going to be a comment that's green when that project manager is looking to approve this bill to pay, and they will be able to click it and see my comment. So if there's a green comment on the screen where they're approving bills to pay, they should click it and see what I'm saying about it as the bookkeeper. So that's the way I give a message about that. I'm going to not submit this. And I think I've made my point about how to set up for expirations, what they're used for somewhat, how you get alerts about them, etc. And there will be, like I said, other videos going on about actually doing your general liability audit when it comes around. Just needed you to be real aware of where those things are used when you set it up on the vendor. And thank you for watching.